Stop what you're doing right now because what I'm about to lay out isn't speculation, isn't theory, and isn't some casual read of the headlines. At 7:43 this morning, three Republican Senate leaders walked into Mitch McConnell's office for what was supposed to be a routine leadership meeting. 47 minutes later, they walked out, and within 2 hours, Washington was burning with the most consequential internal party revolt we've seen since Watergate. This isn't about policy disagreements. This is senior Republicans reaching the conclusion that Donald Trump has become ungovernable, and what triggered it is going to surprise you. Here's what nobody is reporting yet, and here's what I've confirmed through three separate sources inside the Senate Republican Conference. Early Wednesday morning at 2:17 a.m., Donald Trump places a call to the Senate Majority Leader and demands an immediate vote on what he calls the Emergency Powers Expansion Act. He delivers an ultimatum: pass it by Friday, or he will primary every single one of them. He threatens to campaign against Republicans in their own states. Then at 6:30 a.m., leaked audio begins circulating, a recording of Trump privately saying, "I do not need the Senate. These people work for me." That audio moves through senior Republican circles, and the reaction isn't fear, it's fury. By 7:43 a.m., an emergency meeting is convened. McConnell, Thune, Barrasso, and Cornyn are behind closed doors for 47 minutes, and what they decide in that room becomes the most significant challenge to Trump's authority from inside his own party that we've ever seen. To understand why this revolt matters, you have to understand the mechanism Trump has used to control Senate Republicans for the past 8 years. It hasn't been ideology, it hasn't been policy, it's been fear weaponized effectively, fear that can discipline an entire party. Every Republican senator understands the examples. In 2020, Mitt Romney votes to convict Trump in the first impeachment trial, and Trump's response is immediate and brutal. Romney is branded a disgrace, censured by his own state party, isolated and politically damaged. The lesson is clear: defy Trump and you pay. In 2021, Bill Cassidy votes to convict in the second impeachment. He tries to repair the relationship, humiliates himself publicly, votes with Trump again and again, chases approval that never truly comes, and the moment he stops being useful, Trump backs a primary challenger anyway. The message hardens. Loyalty is not protection, it's only a delay. Then in 2023, Kevin McCarthy negotiates a debt ceiling deal. Trump privately disapproves, and within weeks, McCarthy is removed as Speaker. The message becomes unmistakable. Trump can destroy anyone at any time for any reason. That's how authoritarian control works. You don't punish everyone, you make examples. After that, fear does the rest. For 8 years, that fear has been absolute. Senators watched careers end, watched colleagues get humiliated, watched the cost of defiance play out in real time, and they kept deciding that obedience was safer than resistance. But Trump failed to account for one thing: fear only works until people understand the threat never stops. That realization arrived this week because 3 factors converged and changed the calculation. First, the electoral math shifted. The 2024 Senate map is brutal for Republicans. There are 23 Republican seats up for election and only 11 Democratic seats. And polling now shows Trump association has become a net negative. Specific data from Montana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania shows Republicans dropping 6 to 8 points when directly tied to Trump. One senator put it plainly to a colleague: "I can defend conservatism. I cannot defend chaos." Second, the Greenland disaster isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. NATO allies are alarmed. The defense establishment is in revolt, and one retired 4-star admiral summed it up as instability, not strategy. Members of the Senate Armed Services Committee understand what many voters don't. When you threaten military action against allied territory, you're not negotiating, you're destabilizing the international order. Third, the legal pressure is accelerating. Multiple criminal cases are moving faster, emergency stays are being declined, trial dates are locking in, and a senior Republican lawyer said privately that the party is looking at nominating someone who could be in federal custody by November. When you combine electoral vulnerability, foreign policy recklessness, and criminal exposure, the cost-benefit analysis changes. Defending Trump stops being uncomfortable and starts looking like political suicide. According to 2 sources briefed on the meeting, here's what happened inside McConnell's office on Wednesday morning. The participants were McConnell the institutionalist, John Thune the pragmatist, John Barrasso the loyalist under pressure, and John Cornyn representing the raw electoral reality senators are facing. McConnell opened by playing the audio, the full 3-minute recording of Trump saying the Senate works for him. He played it twice. Nobody spoke. One source described the silence as suffocating because every person in the room understood what they were hearing. This wasn't a president frustrated with Congress. This was a president declaring Congress irrelevant. Then came the exchange that turned everything. Thune spoke first and said they couldn't defend any of it, not the Greenland rhetoric, not the emergency powers demand, not the threat to primary their own members. He said they couldn't go on television and explain this to voters who were already exhausted. Barrasso responded with the conflict showing in his words. He warned that if they oppose Trump publicly, he will destroy them individually, and he reminded them of the examples: Romney, Cassidy, Cheney, the people who stood up and were pushed out or made irrelevant. He asked how this was different. McConnell leaned forward and answered with the line that changed the room. He told them it was different because Trump is going to destroy them anyway. The question, he said, is not whether they survive politically, but whether they go down defending Trump or defending the institution. He warned that if they don't draw a line now, there will be no institution left to defend. Cornyn followed with the blunt electoral reality. He said Texas polling had him down 4 points, and every point was tied to Trump-adjacent chaos. He said voters want stability and governance, not their senator explaining why the president is talking about invading Greenland. This is where it becomes critical, because McConnell's proposal wasn't symbolic, it was structural. He laid out a plan, draft a joint letter to the White House stating, clearly the Senate will not vote on expanding emergency powers, announce that leadership will not campaign with Trump unless the foreign policy rhetoric is moderated, warn that if Trump initiates primaries against sitting senators, leadership will support incumbents using the full war chest of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Then McConnell looked at each of them and demanded an answer on the spot. Thune said yes immediately. Cornyn said yes. Barrasso stayed silent for what one source called the longest 30 seconds of the meeting. Then he said McConnell was asking him to commit political suicide. McConnell replied that he was asking him to do his job. Barrasso finally said yes. 4 men, 4 votes, and with that, the structure that has held the Republican Party together for 8 years began to crack. What happened next moved with stunning speed. At 9:15 a.m., McConnell personally called 15 senior Republican senators with a simple message: they're doing this and he needs to know who's with them. 3 committed immediately: Romney, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski. That was expected. But 2 commitments shocked everyone involved: Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio. Pause on that for a second, because Graham's shift is the earthquake. This is Trump's loudest defender, the man who was golfing with him last weekend, the senator who has defended every Trump controversy and every indictment on television for years, and now he breaks. A source close to Graham says he told colleagues he has defended everything, but he will not defend threatening to invade allied territory. He will not defend dismantling Senate authority, and he will not defend calling dissenting senators traitors. He said there's a line, and Trump crossed it. By 10:47 a.m., the letter is drafted, 5 pages, legal language, constitutional framing. The key line from a copy described by sources states they can no longer in good conscience enable conduct that threatens constitutional order and undermines the institutional prerogatives of the United States Senate. Before noon, 12 signatures are committed. At 11:30 a.m., Trump gets word. An aide alerts him through an encrypted message that McConnell and 11 others are signing a letter opposing the emergency powers push, and it will go public today. According to leaked texts circulating among staff, Trump's response is all caps, traitors, all of them. Then Trump moves, he starts calling loyalists. At 12:15 p.m., he calls Lindsey Graham. The call lasts under 2 minutes. Someone briefed on the conversation says Trump tells him, "You are dead to me." Graham responds, "Then I am dead." And the call ends. Trump calls Rubio and says he made him and will destroy him. Rubio responds according to the same source that Trump is destroying himself and should do what he thinks he needs to do. Trump tries calling McConnell 3 times, and McConnell doesn't answer. By 1:40 p.m., the split becomes visible. House Republicans issue a statement of full support for the president. Senate Republicans stay conspicuously silent. Reporters notice the gap immediately. By 2 p.m., major outlets are running stories about Senate leadership refusing to back Trump's emergency powers demand. At 3 p.m., the letter leaks, and it's described as intentional. The Washington Post receives a copy. Politico confirms the signatures within minutes. By 3:15 p.m., the full text is everywhere, and the political world understands this isn't a private disagreement, this is open revolt. But the detail that leaks about 20 minutes later shows how serious this is. A senior Republican strategist familiar with internal planning says Senate leadership has prepared a three-stage contingency plan if Trump retaliates. Stage 1, if Trump attacks publicly, 5 additional senators issue supporting statements, and leadership holds a press conference affirming they respect the presidency but serve the Constitution first. Internal assessment puts this at 80% probability. Stage 2, if Trump initiates primary challenges, the leadership PAC commits $50 million to defend incumbents. The NRSC refuses to fund challengers, and corporate donors are mobilized around the message that the conference stands together. Probability 60%. Stage 3 is what they hope never to use. If Trump keeps escalating, the Senate moves forward with a formal resolution limiting executive emergency powers, requiring a bipartisan coalition and potentially including censure. Probability 30%. One senator involved reportedly said they have war-gamed every scenario, and if Trump wants a fight, they're prepared, and this time they're not backing down. Now here's the part that changes how you should read the next phase. While Republicans were tearing themselves apart Wednesday afternoon, Senate Democrats held their own closed-door meeting. Sources say Chuck Schumer made a calculation that will shape what happens next. Democrats had 2 options. Option 1 was to exploit the chaos, attack Trump and Republicans together, frame this as a GOP civil war proving unfitness to govern and campaign on dysfunction. The upside would be huge, but it risks reuniting Republicans against a common enemy. Option 2 was to enable the revolt, stay publicly quiet, offer quiet support for constitutional measures, and let Republicans fully own the split, removing Trump's ability to turn this into partisan warfare. Sources familiar with Schumer's thinking say he chose option 2. The effect is political judo. If Democrats don't attack, then the story becomes Trump versus his own party, a narrative Trump can't easily win. Behind the scenes, Democratic leadership sends guidance, no public celebration, no cable news victory laps, no statements mocking the letter. Instead, quiet offers to co-sponsor emergency powers limitation if Republicans move forward. The message to Senate Republicans is simple. Democrats will help them do the right thing without making them pay extra political cost. The Republican response to that silence is telling because when Democrats don't provide an external enemy, the internal fractures widen. Wednesday evening at 4:30 p.m., Trump's Truth Social account erupts with 27 posts in 90 minutes, all caps calling senators rhinos, demanding primaries, claiming leadership equals deep state. At 5:15 p.m., the first primary challenge is announced, a MAGA-aligned challenger in South Carolina targeting Lindsey Graham. Graham responds with 4 words to reporters, "Bring it on." By 6:40 p.m., Fox News primetime coverage is visibly split. Sean Hannity defends Trump without reservation. Laura Ingraham expresses serious concerns about the Greenland rhetoric. Tucker Carlson says Republicans are finally showing spine. For the first time in years, conservative media isn't speaking with one voice. At 8 p.m., corporate donors move. 3 major Republican donors issue a joint statement supporting constitutional governance and institutional stability. This is business code for backing the Senate, not Trump. By 9:30 p.m., the public count reaches 17 Republican senators aligned with the McConnell letter, with 5 more privately committed but not yet public. The number everyone is watching is 18. If 18 Republicans align with all Democrats' emergency powers expansion is blocked, 18 means Trump loses. Overnight, another development shows the crisis is deepening. Thursday morning, around 6 a.m., internal Republican polling data leaks to Politico. The numbers are devastating. A generic Republican candidate in swing states is +2. The same candidate with Trump's endorsement drops to -4. That's a 6-point swing. And that swing is the difference between holding the Senate and losing it. Then at 7:30 a.m., 3 Senate offices confirm something else. 42 Republican Senate staffers sign an internal letter saying they cannot in good conscience continue defending the indefensible. The letter reportedly threatens mass resignations if senators backtrack. This is unprecedented. When junior staffers refuse to draft statements and answer phones for a reversal, the operation collapses. At 8:15 a.m., the business community weighs in again. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce issues a statement emphasizing constitutional stability as essential for growth and investor confidence, a clear warning to stop the chaos or lose funding. The National Association of Manufacturers echoes the message within the hour. Corporate America just told Senate Republicans which side to be on. At 9 a.m., international pressure arrives. The UK Prime Minister's office issues a diplomatic statement expressing alarm about rhetoric targeting the territorial integrity of allied nations. Germany follows, France follows. The NATO Secretary General issues a statement reinforcing that Article 5 commitments are sacred and non-negotiable. Allies are publicly rebuking an American president, and Senate Republicans are reading those statements knowing Trump has created a real international crisis. This isn't a single front. Trump is facing pressure from senators, staff, donors, media, and international allies. This is encirclement. When you're surrounded, you retreat or you escalate. Thursday, Trump chooses escalation. He announces an emergency rally in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's home state, scheduled for this Saturday. The message is obvious: real Republicans versus Renos. It's Trump declaring war on his own party in the most public way possible. By 11:30 a.m., Trump meets with his most loyal House allies. Names described by sources include Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, and leadership figures within the House Freedom Caucus. They plan what one source calls a maximum pressure campaign against Senate Republicans. At 12:45 p.m., Trump posts on Truth Social that the 17 traitors will pay and calls for protests at Senate offices. Federal law enforcement elevates security concerns. Capitol Police move to heightened alert. Then McConnell responds publicly through a spokesperson saying threats and intimidation will not deter constitutional responsibilities and that the Senate doesn't work for any individual. It serves the American people and the Constitution. But there's a part the statement doesn't highlight. Sources say McConnell quietly reaches out to 5 Democratic senators, not Schumer, but visible moderates. Names described include Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, John Tester, Sherrod Brown, and Bob Casey. The message is direct. If Republicans move forward with emergency powers limitations, will they support it? All 5 say yes. The math changes, with 17 Republicans committed and those Democrats willing the votes to block expanded emergency powers are there. Trump doesn't know it yet, but the revolt has already succeeded. Step back and understand what this represents. This isn't only one crisis, it's the mechanism of authoritarian control breaking in real time. First, fear stops working. Trump's entire structure depended on Republicans being more afraid of him than of electoral consequences. That calculation reversed. Second, collective action breaks authoritarian leverage. Authoritarians isolate targets and pick them off one by one. But when senators move together, commit publicly, and sign their names, nobody can be singled out. The risk becomes shared, and the protection becomes mutual. Third, institutions can resist when they choose to. The Senate has constitutional authority Trump needs, and for years it surrendered that authority voluntarily because senators feared personal consequences. Now they're reclaiming it, proving the weakness was a choice, not an inevitability. So what happens next? There are 3 scenarios with honest probability. 1, Trump backs down, moderates rhetoric, drops the demand, declares victory anyway, probability 25%. 2, stalemate. Trump continues attacks but avoids full primary war. The Senate holds firm but doesn't go further. The fracture continues through the election. Probability 50%. 3, full rupture. Trump launches all-out primaries. The Senate passes emergency powers limits with Democratic votes. The party splits formally and the electoral damage becomes catastrophic. Probability 25%. Based on conversations described with multiple Senate offices, the likely path is Scenario 2 drifting towards Scenario 3. The split doesn't heal, it widens gradually day by day until something breaks permanently. Bring it full circle, this revolt isn't about Greenland, tariffs, or routine policy disagreements. It's about control of the Republican Party. Trump demanded absolute authority, and the Senate said no, and that no changes everything. This fracture is structural, not emotional. It's political survival math. When defending Trump costs seats, behavior changes, loyalty becomes liability. But here's the concern, regardless of party, when authoritarians feel cornered, they escalate. Trump has never faced internal revolt like this. His pattern under threat is to hit harder. What happens when the target isn't Democrats but his own party? Can the Republican Party survive a civil war? Can American democracy handle the fallout of a major party tearing itself apart? Nobody has those answers, but we're going to find out soon. Over the next 48 hours, 3 things will become clear. Trump will either back down or double down. Senate Republicans will either hold firm or splinter, and we'll see whether this revolt becomes a revolution or just another failed attempt at resistance. I'll be here breaking down every development as it happens. The next 72 hours will decide whether Trump continues to control the Republican Party or whether the Republican Party finally moves to control Trump. If you care about what happens next, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss what's coming. Stay alert.